Coronavirus. Is it the end of the world? How to protect yourself.
KC Craichy.
This is KC Craichy coming to you with my podcast on the subject of coronavirus. You're hearing a lot of stuff out there. It'll drive you crazy. Literally, if you follow the news all day long, in the first day you'll be incredibly confused and you won't know where to go with this. I wrote this blog article that has now gone viral. It's called, "Is Coronavirus the End of the World? What You Can Do to Protect Yourself?" And so here we are talking about that subject again, because that is the number one question that I'm getting these days. So let's roll with it. The main thing is, first of all, healthy people get sick very seldom, including coronavirus. Remember, they no matter what percentage they're saying are getting coronavirus, it's a very small percentage, and those are not the healthy of the population for the most part. So just coming in contact with a virus does not mean you have a virus. So I'll quickly say that your immune system is the key. So maintaining your immune system, do things that elevate your immune system, not to drag your immune system down. So what's the big destructive thing we can do for our immune system? Sugar and white carbohydrates being the primary thing that we're doing. So sugar compromises immunity. There's a thing called the leukocytic index that on the average is how many pathogens a white blood cell can eat in an hour. And the ideal number is around 13. So studies have shown that 100 grams of carbohydrates in a single sitting, like a pizza meal, for instance, and we know we eat a lot more than 100 grams sometimes, can drop immunity, the leukocytic index, from 13 to 1.8 within an hour and for several hours. So here's the deal. We oftentimes have viruses and other pathogens on board, but your immune system is handling them perfectly. But then we do something to compromise our immunity, and this is the problem. So you're going along fine. You have sugar, wine, soft drinks, juice, something along those lines, and you compromise your immunity. So your immunity drops. It's like you have a wall and it's holding back the water, and then the wall falls down for a little while and the water then overtakes the body. So the body can be overtaken by a virus or another pathogen simply by dropping the immune system in the middle of a season like this, the cold and flu season. Now, why is it the cold and flu season? Because in the cold and flu season, it's always the winter. What happens in the winter? In the winter, the vitamin D levels are lower because the sun is lower. You don't get as much sun, particularly if you're in the north. Interestingly, how the Lord made nutrition or the ecosystem, if you will, the fish in the north, the cold water fish, salmon, mackerel, tuna, herring, these fish have vitamin D in it, primarily like codfish. You've heard of codfish. These things have a lot of vitamin D in it. So if you live the farthest north where you get the least sun, you have an indigenous food that actually has a lot of vitamin D in it. It's fascinating. You know, Grandma used to say, take your cod liver oil. There was really a lot of wisdom in that. You have vitamin D and vitamin A in there, and that's two of the vitamins you need to make sure you maintain in order to be safe in this time. So we're not going to talk to you today about the details of washing your hands and how many seconds and social distancing and all the things you're hearing like that. You can find that anywhere. That's just common sense cold and flu season preparation. What I'm going to talk to you about is how you maintain immunity. So there are 7 areas of lifestyle we like to manage: hydration, nutrition, exercise, stress, sleep, environmental hazards, and meditation and prayer. So these are 7. We're writing about an 8th now, which we'll talk to you later, but right now get the 7 right. So basically go down these lists and say, hydration, how am I doing? Am I drinking lots of spring water, or am I drinking a lot of things instead of water? So a lot of people will drink tap water. It compromises your immunity. Why? Because of a number of things, but the fluoride is really bad for you. But let's say chlorine and fluoramine and those sort of things, they literally kill the gut flora. Much like when you put these compounds, these chemicals in your pool, it kills the algae and the stuff in the pool because that's what it's there for. And so that's why it is in tap water in the first place. And then when it comes into your body, it does the same thing. So it's very destructive to drink tap water all the time. Just about anybody can afford at least a sink filter, which is not still ideal, but that will save you a lot from your gut flora. And then eat a lot of fermented foods, sauerkraut and miso and tempeh. These things actually enhance your immunity by enhancing your gut flora. And then you talk about things like glutamine, which helps your gut, and so many other things. And the main thing is that your body has to have every essential nutrient, every vitamin, every mineral, every amino acid, every fatty acid, every polyphenolic compound, phytonutrients. These are required to have proper immunity and to function properly. One of my sons told me a story the other day, which I thought was really fascinating. He went to get some PRP injections, protein-rich, platelet-rich plasma injections. And before he went, I said, the night before, make sure you take living fuel and aminos and micros the night before and the next morning, and also omegas. And by doing that, he did that. He took a really heavy dose. I never heard anybody taking that many scoops, but he went there and the doctor drew his blood and was blown away by how vibrant the color of his blood was. So when you think about that, when you actually have everything your body needs, amazing things happen with your health, and that's cold and flu and so on. I got the flu for the first time in December. I got the flu for the first time in years, and in 4 days, I was back 100%. Because I know how to deal with these kind of things, and I'm a healthy person. So if you're healthy, you can overcome these kind of things. So there's a lot of other things we need to talk about here in nutrition space, okay? So we talked about sugar and junk food. Burnt oils are another thing that will compromise your immunity. What does that mean? French fries, fried chicken, donuts, those sort of things, they compromise immunity because your body has to detox those things. Another thing that is actually enhancing to immunity is short-term time-restricted eating. So you might call that intermittent fasting, but it's really a little different in that you have windows that you eat. Let's just say breakfast is at noon and dinner is at 6, and your eating window is an hour. And what this does is this short-term fasting, where you get 18 hours of fasting, 6 hours of feasting, or 6 hours with 2 meals in it, this actually enhances your immunity strongly. But if you were to actually fast for 3 days, that would reduce your immunity sometime between the second and the third day. So that becomes problematic. So getting a lot of nutrition, a lot of full spectrum nutrition, and spacing your meals, like time restricted eating, that is a very powerful technique. So there's a lot of stuff in this article that'll be very interesting to you if you are someone who needs to know. If you just want to know what to do, then clean up your diet. Exercise mildly, because overtraining compromises immunity. So you're going to have to exercise, but don't just push it to the limit, because this actually compromises immunity. And then in the links below, my friend Dr. Robert Scott Bell, he wrote a really interesting article and talked about homeoprophylaxis. Now, I was sitting with Dr. Cowden, Lee Cowden, last week in Texas for 2 days. And every time I'm around Dr. Cowden, he's one of the top docs in the world. Every time I'm around him, I just soak up information because he's just so deep. But one thing he was talking about, he and Robert Scott Bell, the two people talking about this, homeoprophylaxis is basically a homeopathic nosode, a homeopathic immunization. So they give these immunizations, and they have proven that the theory on which vaccinations in America and allopathic medicine is based on is flawed, because homeoprophylaxis was used when medicines were not available in Brazil. I believe it's in the 1970s. They had 2 pandemics, and the homeopaths made up all these nosodes, and they gave them to the people that were sick and people who weren't sick. And they had a 90+% effectiveness in curing the onset of this pandemic, and the effectiveness, we don't know what the percentage is, but it was very effective on preventing it as well. Interestingly, with homeoprophylaxis, the way they test a vaccination in America and in most of the world in allopathic medicine, is they literally test to see if you have an antibody in your blood to a particular pathogen. If you do not, then they have to give you another shot. That's what they do at airports all over the place. If you travel somewhere and they say you need an immunization, they'll give it to you right on the spot, or you have to go back. And this is a flawed test, because homeoprophylaxis has shown for many years that if you get a homeopathic vaccination, like the homeoprophylaxis for various pandemic, that the blood levels do not show antibody increases. You see, when you test someone after they've had this, it does not show antibodies in the blood, but it shows when you actually introduce the pathogen to the person, it actually has a memory where it recognizes this as a pathogen and deals with it. So it's the ideal way to do it. Now, there have been several drugs that I've run across that actually have been around for 30 years treating malaria and that sort of thing. These are generic drugs with some side effects, but not devastating side effects like these new antivirals. And these drugs now have been shown in studies to treat the coronavirus, COVID-19. They have been shown to treat positively people who were infected and save them, and also be used prophylactically where it actually, if they give it to them before getting it, they won't get it. So I am not a fan of the drug approach, but if you're going to use a drug approach, let's at least have one that's been out there for 30 years and isn't killing people. The treatment isn't killing people, because part of the problem here is that we have so many people out there saying the cause of death is COVID-19. But what you really find, if you search it out, is that the drugs that they used to treat these patients was like an antiviral with a side effect of breathing disorder. And obviously this is like a pneumonia flu is basically what this coronavirus is. A pneumonia flu it has an affinity for the lungs. And so if you deal with that in a positive way with things that are known, you have a lot better shot. If you use these brand new immunizations that are coming out, I mean, to be the first in line for an immunization is not a wise thing to do. So consider other alternatives. This ozone and UV, tremendous techniques, been used for many, many years. And this is the technique used if someone, say, goes into the hospital with something that's really deadly, like 40% deadly, Ebola. They go in the hospital, let's say the patient dies, they remove the patient from the hospital. They're dealing with this patient in hazmat suits. So when the patient dies and they take him to the morgue, they have to sterilize the room. And how do they do that, might you suppose? They, of course, clean it the normal way in hazmat suits. And then they'll set up an ozone machine and a UV machine, sometimes ozone or UV. But these two devices are what sterilizes a room with the most deadly of diseases, someone's infectious in there prior. So these are powerful techniques. I can tell you I had an ear infection, and this was a year and a half ago, I guess. And I had an ear infection, which I usually could get rid of, I don't know, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Well, it persisted for a month. So I went to Kavi Kalidas here in Orlando, a great naturopathic medicine doctor and an MD. And so I asked him if he would prescribe a IV ozone treatment for me, ozone or radiation, that whatever you call it, ozone chemotherapy is also often called. So basically they take out a bag of blood, and then they mix the bag of blood with ozone. And as you mix it with ozone, you see it becomes bright red. And then they hang it from the stand, and they put it back in you, but they run it through a UV light on the way through. So ozone plus UV. And then literally after they opened it up and started to infuse that into my vein, within 5 minutes, I felt my ear infection start to quench. And within 10 minutes, I didn't have an ear infection anymore, and I haven't had to go back or do anything else about it. So it is really incredible, the things that are known out there that are not at all considered by conventional medicine. You have a problem like this, and then the government says, hey, let's put $9 billion emergency money into this, and we use a third of that to develop a new vaccine, and we use the other for tests and for this, that, and the other. I can tell you personally, I've interviewed people who have been diagnosed with COVID-19, and they tell me how they diagnosed them. They said, well, they didn't have a test, but they were able to go through this constellation of symptoms and then interview them, say, where have you been? And he said, well, I was on the border of Iran doing ministry for the last 3 weeks. They said, oh, you have coronavirus. So this is basically how you differentially diagnose the flu from coronavirus. So it's really hard to differentially diagnose. So if they say that you have it, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But the point is simply you still need to do a lot of the same things. Get nutrified, vegetables, healthy vegetables, some fruits, clean proteins. These things are critical. Our Living Fuel is the most nutritious food that exists. We can't imagine a better way to get nutrified, but you must find a way. I looked at a lot of articles, the links on this article, that a lot of articles suggest that nutrient deficiencies, particularly specific ones, selenium, zinc, vitamin C, deficiencies in these things literally cause the virus to become more virulent. So it reduces your immunity and increases the virulence of the virus itself. So it's a double whammy. So we must be nutrified. So people talk about get your nutrients from food. It's not going to happen, folks. If you just look at a topographical map of the United States and look at where the selenium deposits are, you'll see very small amounts of selenium deposits across America, except for up in the northern or the mid-northern west and Salt Lake City area. So if you're not getting your vegetables grown in those regions, you are not getting selenium in your vegetables. There are a pittance of amount. So you have to supplement trace minerals, zinc, iodine. There's a lot of things that are very important in protecting you and into healing you in these things. So again, be properly nutrified. Take a look at the links here. I've labeled the links so you can understand what they are. They're not just references that say that what I said in my article is not made up by me. There are references there, but there are also a number of links where if you really want to know more, you can take a dive in these links and see things like the flu shot reduces immunity. So why am I saying that? Because all the talking heads on TV are saying, oh, wash your hands and get a flu shot. It's like, that is the most asinine advice I'd ever heard, because the CDC admits, and I posted on this article, I posted that they said the last, 5 flu seasons alone, the flu shot barely was effective against the flu. The seasonal flu, not to mention you are getting zero effectiveness against coronavirus. So you need to make sure that you're paying attention. I provided the links from very credible allopathic medical sources that the flu shot reduces immunity in the year you take it and subsequent years as well. So the flu shot is going to take a whack on your immunity, and there are a lot better ways to help yourself become immune from the flu. Now, obviously, all healing comes from the Lord. I'm a believer in prayer. Obviously, that's the number one technique there is to let the person who created you, God himself, heal you. That is what I believe in the absolute most. And in the natural, when we're using wisdom, there are a lot of things we need to look at that are valid science. And I'll tell you one more, because this video got pulled from the internet. A top doc sent me a video of another top doc with a simple little treatment. Now, in the article, I talk about heat because the virus is susceptible to heat. 133 degrees is the kill point for coronavirus, or this coronavirus. So obviously, if you're sitting in your sauna, like I have a sauna, so I can sit in the sauna, I can pour eucalyptus oil in the little steam bowl, I can pour silver in there, it'll steam the silver, and the temperature I can set at 150 or higher. So 150 or higher for 10 minutes is preventative to any virus through the nasal passages, and that's where it comes: nasal, ear, and eyes, and that sort of thing. So if you actually can heat the virus, or heat yourself, it's basically an artificial fever, you can actually treat the virus in a very powerful way. 2 times a day if you're doing preventative, 5 times a day if you actually have symptoms of some kind. And what this does is heats the nasal passages to above the kill point and literally melts the genetic material called a virus. So it's a simple little approach. Now, this doctor video was showing using a hairdryer, literally a hairdryer on a low setting, blowing it in your face, breathing in. So while you're blowing it in your face, you're breathing in. And you turn it away when you're breathing out. Now, also with the other hand, or have someone else, a bottle of cold water, spray in the face while you're breathing in. So this makes sense. So here's your hairdryer. You're blowing, you're breathing in, and you're squirting the face. So the point of squirting the face is so you don't scorch your skin. So you breathe in, turn it out, hold it, breathe out, do it again, breathe in, hold it, breathe out. That's simple. So doing this for 5 to 10 minutes is preventative twice a day, and treat is an awesome treatment for 5 times a day. Now, this came from very credible sources. It's just applying the science of the virus dies at 133 degrees. So the sauna is ideal. Most people don't have a sauna. I was just on the phone today with a university professor, and he was telling me that after we spoke the other day, he went out and bought all the hair dryers that Target had. So he is in possession of more hair dryers than any person else in America, I'm guessing, at this point. But anyway, the point is, so there's a lot of simple ways. This thing about breathing in silver, it's in the article with Dr. Robert Scott Bell. You breathe in this what's called an atomizer, or something. It's a device you buy at the drugstore, which we have a link about it down below. But the device, you pour colloidal silver. Sovereign Silver brand is the one we trust. Colloidal silver, and you steam it and you breathe it in. And as it goes in your nose and your lungs, it neutralizes viruses. Notice I say neutralize and that sort of thing, because you can't kill a virus because it's not a living thing. So how does a virus work? It comes in, it starts to hide itself in cellular material. Then it attaches to the cell, it penetrates the cell, and then it goes in and hijacks the replicator of the cell that's designed for cellular apoptosis. What does that mean? That means the cell divides and dies. That's the way it works. It's called cellular apoptosis. That gets rid of old material, but makes a new cell. And so this virus literally will go in the cell, hidden in cellular material, so the immune system can't get it, and then it will replicate using the replicator and hijack the replicator so it cannot replicate the cell anymore. And it will then divide and divide and divide until it has a tremendous amount of virus in the cell. And then they wrap themselves in genetic material. They morph into a different shape. And then the cell dies, and then they're released into the bloodstream to do this to other cells. So this is the process that we're talking about. We have to interrupt that process. There's any number of ways to do that. And a lot of them are links here. So I won't bore you with more of the actual what's in the links. I invite you, though, to go look, because every day we're updating these links with new links and new, very awesome information, very awesome techniques and information for you to protect yourself and to heal yourself. One yesterday came out with a Dr. Charles that I posted. He talked about the specific meds, and it's the meds for the top 10 disorders in America, the specific meds people are taking that enhance your susceptibility to receiving this virus. So susceptibility is the issue. I mean, you decrease your susceptibility, you decrease your possibility of getting sick. You increase your susceptibility and increase the virulence of the virus, then you have big problems potentially coming down the road. So this is very complex, but we're going to be speaking on this regularly. And please post your questions and we'll get back to you on them. God bless you and have an amazing day.